Welcome to the Persevere podcast, where we help founders create awesome businesses and products and not run out of money. Hi, I'm Patty Post, founder and CEO of Checkable Health. I started this podcast because I experienced loneliness and solitude as a solo founder. I had no one to turn to, and I couldn't find relevant content for founders of high-tech startups like me. So, like the true entrepreneur I am, I started and decided to do it myself. I really believe as founders, we need to keep persevering because what you are building in the world needs to be built. And if you don't persevere, no one else is going to. So keep on doing it. Today, my guest is Dr. Lyndsey Harper. She is an OB-GYN turned founder of a digital health app called Rosy. Rosy is a women's sexual health app, and it will help you create a personalized wellness plan. It's no secret that you will turn on a TV show and you will probably hear an ad for men's sexual health. It's been very well researched, very well funded, and it's something that has taken great importance in our society. Dr. Lyndsey Harper, as a practicing OB-GYN, she saw that her patients were coming to her with these sexual frustrations, whether that was lack of sex, lack of desire, pain. She saw that this was something that was really common. And when she looked out into the market, she couldn't find any assets and or communities or products that could help these women. So, like the true entrepreneur that she is, she decided to create Rosy. She has raised just under 4 million to fund this business, and she has a team of over 10 that are developing this native app. She is the only one in the country doing it, and her story is incredible. I think it's inspiring. I also think that it gives me confidence that there is something in the world for everyone. All right, welcome everyone. This is Patty Post, and I'm your host of the podcast. And today I have a very special guest, Dr. Lyndsey Harper, who is founder and CEO of Rosy, a sexual app for women that we can find at the App Store on Google and Apple. She is also a OB-GYN and a mother, a wife, and she is absolutely inspirational. So, Dr. Lyndsey Harper, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a sweet introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I am so proud to have you on because what you are doing for women, I'm going to just use you in the same name as Dr. Soni Javed, is the two of you, and you're just bosses in healthcare and in women's health. And it just, from a female that is a mother of a daughter, that I'm like, thank you for doing this because I hope healthcare is better for you and I, but also for the next generation. So thank you for your investment of what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, honestly, it's my passion and I love the work and I love the connections that I get to make through the work, just like this. So, I mean, and I'm doing it as much as I am for you and me, for my daughters as well. So I'm right there with you.
Isn't that so cool? I love it. Well, tell me about how long did you practice as a OB-GYN?
So after my residency, so med school is 4 years, residency is 4 years, and then I was in private practice for 8 years here in Dallas in private practice. And what kept happening, like I feel like I was really well trained for pregnancy, for taking care of women in who needed surgery, screening for cancer, screening for STIs, contraception, a little bit of menopause, all the like what we in medicine call the bread and butter gynecology. But what was happening is that my patients, as we were kind of like, growing up together, if you will, and also just developing deeper relationships through, a longer course of time, they started to share with me sexual health concerns. And I was completely taken off guard. I was like, wait, what's going on here? Why are so many of my patients having trouble with sexual health? Particularly low desire was one I was hearing about all the time, but also sexual pain, trouble with orgasm, pain or, symptoms after orgasm, like all of these sort of nondescript things. I was like, man, I really missed the boat on this in my training. I had a baby in residency. I'm like, maybe I was on maternity leave, or maybe I have a very specific subset of patients, or like I was trying to figure out why this was happening. But it's that way for everybody. 43% of women have a sexual health concern, nearly half of us. And OB-GYNs across the board are not trained in women's sexual health. It's just, once the realization was made, I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, what
Yes.
year is this? How is this the state of healthcare? How is this the state of the care that I'm providing? And what can I do to fix it? So that's really where this all got started.
It reminds me of speaking with physicians about the lack of nutritional training
Oh, yeah.
throughout
Very
medical
similar.
school.
Yeah. I mean, we have more on nutrition than we do on women's sexual health, if that leads you to any conclusions, which is very disappointing for most of us. I did learn a lot about nutrition in medical school that I had never learned before, but not nearly enough to speak to it from, someone who you would call doctor, right? So I did have a baseline improvement in my nutrition knowledge, but definitely not anything like you would expect us to have. And it's just because it's not been a huge part of medicine in the past, but women's sexual health, 0 hours, like
Like
literally
no
0 hours.
chapter, not
No,
even a
no chapter,
reference.
no lecture, no nothing. I spent 2 weeks in an erectile dysfunction clinic at the VA as a medical
Okay.
student.
That's what I was
So I
just
got,
going to
yeah.
ask.
So the opposite is not true for men, and that's it's frustrating because when we think about men's sexual health, who takes care of that? Everyone knows urologists take care of men's sexual health problems, but you can also get an erectile dysfunction prescription from a family practitioner. You can get it from an internist. You can get it from lots of different disciplines of medicine. Who is taking care of women's sexual health complaints? It's not urologists. It's not OB-GYNs. Like, there is nobody. And so we just have to really, my job, I feel, is to ring that bell for women and for, the medical profession, and say, hello, alert,
Right.
something is not right here. Like, we deserve better. And we'll get there. I think as we sort of collectively stand up and, ask for what we need, and on the medical side, really recognize this deficit, that we'll get there.
So, what are some of the most common problems that you see? How do you go from diagnosing to treatment and then ongoing treatment?
Yeah. So the biggest sexual problem that women face is low desire, and about 38% of women report low desire. The next biggest one is trouble with orgasm and arousal, and that's about a quarter of women. And then we also have issues with lubrication. Lubrication issues come up during lots of times of life. It can be postpartum, it can be during certain times of your cycle, it can be during menopause, obviously, and postmenopause. Also, there's, sexual pain is something that's really understudied and undertreated and under discussed. And so the data on sexual pain is kind of all over the map because we don't have a great way to study it, but the incidence is anywhere from about 10% to 75%. So the data is that 75% of women will experience sexual pain at some point in their lives. So, there's a lot of different issues. And I think the bad rap that sexual health gets, because we don't know enough to speak, intelligently about it, is that it's really complicated, right? Like, we can't possibly go there. It's too complicated. And I'm like, you guys have lost your minds. Like, we're doing
Yeah,
like gene therapy. I think we can figure this out.
totally.
And yes. And so the important thing for me to sort of spread the word about, especially for physicians and other healthcare professionals, are that think about it maybe kind of like depression, right? We understand our concept of depression is that there is a medical aspect, like a neurotransmitter aspect. There is a behavioral health aspect, right? We give behavioral health modifications all the time. And there is a relationship aspect, or a, social aspect. The same is true for sexual health. Just because there might be a relationship aspect, there might be a mental health aspect, that does not mean that there's not a medical aspect. In fact, many of the times there is, and it is our jobs as physicians to address the medical pieces of the puzzle, right? So it really depends on what the cause of the problem is, right? And that depends on sort of what the treatment might be and how that is ongoing. But we operate in this multidisciplinary model, which is to say we recognize the woman, and this could, to me, this really applies to all aspects of healthcare. But since I'm building this company, this is how I've decided to address sexual health, that we address it from the medical side of things, from the mental health side of things, and from the social side of things. And we really build this holistic model because that's how I want my healthcare needs addressed. And that really applies to women's sexual health as well. So, for example, if a woman is describing that she has low desire, then my job and physicians' jobs and therapist jobs potentially as well are to say, okay, is this low desire an opportunity for us to intervene on a behavioral health and or maybe even a re-education side of things, or is there an underlying pathology that involves the neurotransmitters in the brain called HSDD or hypoactive sexual desire disorder? And there are ways to tease that out that we learn, when we get adequate training in women's sexual health. And yeah, so we could go into that as much or as little as you want to, but the short answer is that there are educational pieces that everybody needs and deserves. There are behavior health changes that we can all make that improve, health in general, but particularly sexual health. And then some patients also need medication. And so, what that takes is conversations with healthcare providers. That takes us all being aware that these are problems that really exist in the world and there are evidence-based treatments to help them. And then it takes, educated people to intervene and start those conversations. So it's really about building an entire ecosystem. But honestly, it's not that complicated. And that is the name of my lecture that I give to physicians all the time. It's like we're doing women and ourselves a disservice with this narrative of like, oh, we couldn't possibly. And it's just our way of sort of distancing ourselves from it. So, because we just don't know that much about it in our regular training. But there's lots of information out there. And once you take the time to learn, I would say an hour of it, you're 100% more capable than you were before.
It's almost like a scarcity mindset. So then you're like,
Absolutely.
we're incapable of doing anything. It's like, well,
and
no.
that's, and I don't fault the physicians. I fault the system because it's not set up for us to be successful. We're not reimbursed for these visits. We're not trained, as I mentioned. There's 2 FDA approved medications for women. There's 26 for men. So there are a lot of opportunities to bolster this up on the medical side of things, and it's not necessarily the physician's fault. It's really the system in which we grew, but we are now, as grown-up doctors, responsible for changing that system when we notice, something's wrong.
Rosy is considered a wellness app. When I'm looking at the description, and a wellness health app, and something that you say on there is cognitive behavior. Can you talk to us about that and what that means and
Sure,
why
absolutely.
that is on the app?
Yeah, so there's a concept called cognitive behavioral therapy, and it goes by CBT for short. And what that is it comes out of the psychology world, and it's a way of helping to address thoughts in our brains about, circumstances that are in our lives. So, for example, if we're talking about a sexual health problem, the thought may be, I hate having sex. Right? That may be the thought. And there may be an opportunity to sort of change the way our brain thinks about the circumstance of having sex, right? Maybe it's, I don't hate having sex. Maybe it's, I'm so freaking tired and I have no time for myself. And, maybe it's all these other things that got you there, but it's not actually sex you hate.
Yes.
It's these other things that are sort of hampering you from experiencing the time you need for pleasure, right? And so if we can kind of untangle that, that has been shown to be an effective treatment for sexual health problems in women. It's also been shown to be an effective treatment for weight loss, for depression, for lots of things in the medical and mental health worlds. And so we know that when we're taking care of women in a holistic, multidisciplinary model like we do at Rosy, that has to be a very important piece of it, right? We are not all about, let me be the first to tell you that if a person needs a prescription, I want them to have a prescription. But I also want them to have the tools and the education they need to optimize along with that prescription. That's a piece of the puzzle. That is not the entire pizza. And so for me, whenever we're learning how to optimize our our experience of our life, CBT practices, and this is proven, this is not my opinion, are a big piece of that puzzle. So whenever we were picking all the components of Rosy, we know that CBT helps women with sexual problems and dysfunction. So we incorporated that as much as we could in the platform. So that's through digital health interventions, meaning like we offer our users an opportunity to reflect on their feelings and the thoughts around those feelings on a daily basis. Some of those are sexual health related, others are not. And then we also offer coaching on the platform, and these coaches operate in that same model to help our members identify if they are having specific problematic thoughts that could be reworked and reframe really how they're viewing sex, how they're viewing pleasure, how they're viewing the future of their sexual health. And it's so powerful, honestly, and can really change, perspectives and lives within, minutes. So
Yeah.
it's a really, really cool tool. I'm a huge, I love what I do. So I'm a huge dork for all this stuff, but when you see it in action, it's impressive for sure.
So would that be if you are very self-conscious of, you just had a baby and
Sure.
you're very self-conscious of your body, and
Absolutely.
you might enjoy sex, but the thought of your partner seeing you without clothes on is you can't go there. You're
Unfathomable.
very
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So is that something that is
absolutely
you could get through that with cognitive therapy?
100%. We talk about body image a lot on the platform. In fact, right before this, one of my team members and I were just having a call about body image, and 67% of our users report that they have a negative body image. And so, I mean, we know that this is a huge issue for women just generally, but particularly women on our platform. And so we talk a lot about, okay, negative body image is one thing, but what if we just have neutral body image?
Yeah.
What if we just don't hate our bodies? Is that a possibility? And so you get to this, you can work through this series of thoughts of okay, I'm going from extremely negative, minus 100 to maybe minus 70 for a bit, maybe minus 50, maybe minus 30. Then maybe I get to neutral where I'm like, you know what? I get it that this isn't what I would order if I were ordering, but also my body can do pretty amazing things. I'm super strong. I get up every morning and contribute to the world in a positive way. This is pretty awesome,
Yeah.
So it's slowly over time. It's not as if we're going to wake up and be look at my sexual goddess self. I mean, ideally, great, but it's a very practical way to sort of what we call thought bridging, to get from kind of where you are to where you want to be. It's not overnight. It's a gradual process, but you'll notice the positive effects of that movement, at every step of the way.
That sounds nice, actually. And I heard someone say, your body has done so much. After I was saying, after I had my first, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just hate how I look. And she said to me, your body just created a miracle. 100%. Your husband does not care. Your husband would rather have sex
really
than not. They don't care.
Exactly. They don't
care. You should look at yourself and be super proud of what you've just accomplished. And I've had all C-sections. So that's something that still I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I should get a tummy tuck. And right. I don't want $10,000 to go towards another surgery, right? Not another surgery, but those are mental ways that I refer back to that conversation quite a bit in my mind.
Totally. Yeah. And there's lots of different ways through these amazing people that we've worked with that I've learned. I'm a physician, right? So I'm not trained in the therapy world, but I have had some training through all of these people that we've worked with. There's a whole nother idea called thought stopping, where you identify those problematic thoughts. Or you're looking in the mirror, that C-section scar, and you're meh, this is not for me, but then, so there's a way to interrupt and be hey, would I talk to my daughter like that? Absolutely not. Would I talk to my best friend like that? Absolutely not. What are some things I might say to my daughter or my best friend if I were looking at her in the mirror? And you try to parse out those thoughts and ideas. Just shut down the C-section ideas. That's not helpful. It's not going anywhere. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you want to have surgery. We've decided you don't. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's let's focus on the things that we might call out to our best friend or our daughter and start telling ourselves those stories rather than the really negative ones that we've just learned to put on repeat from society and culture and what we learned from our upbringing, you know?
Super powerful. And it's being
Yeah.
super present in that moment of like, and being
Yes.
aware, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And we can teach that stuff to our girls, you know, like, so it's not, once again, like this, the work that we do isn't, I mean, it can be just for us and it has validity in being just for you and just for me. But I think it really appeals to us as women and as caretakers to think, wow, like think about the positive that we could do for the rest of the world as well. And so when we model these behaviors, that's what our girls learn. And how much cooler would that be than this other sort of negative narrative that we've all learned?
100%. They're going to
Yeah.
be healthier, happier, more confident in their relationships and in themselves.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's the hope for sure.
Okay, so tell me some more benefits, features and benefits
Yeah.
that you have of Rosy and how it impacts us as females or those that
Yeah.
just your customers.
Totally. Okay, so when anybody downloads Rosie, they'll go through this onboarding questionnaire, right? And what that does is it helps us to understand where each of the people that onboard to the platform are coming from, and we understand that every person's sexuality is as unique as their fingerprint, right? It's not just are you gay or straight or what you know. There's so many things that come into that. It's our identity, it's our sexuality, it's our health, our physical health status, it's our mental health status. Where are we in our reproductive life cycle? Are we struggling with infertility? Have we had breast cancer? What are the religious and cultural overtones that we've experienced in our lives that might be affecting how we think about sex and approach sex in the first place? What's our partnership status? Is our partner experiencing sexual problems? What's the communication like in our world about sex? So we're able to take each of those little ingredients and create for each of our users this personalized wellness plan that then they can interact with every single day while they're working through. I mean, that breadth of all of the content we've created. And we've done so with physicians like me. We've done it with therapists, with psychologists, with pelvic floor physical therapists, with oncologists, with trauma therapists, really trying to put into, this product, pour into it all of our understanding of this multidisciplinary and holistic approach to sexual health to really support women in all the ways that we need to be supported. So if a user comes through and she's having, menopausal symptoms and vaginal dryness, we have like best in class, Harvard menopause doc who's created a whole menopause course for us to help our users understand what their options are, what the risks and benefits are, much like you might encounter in a specialist office if you were to have an hour, 2 hours with them to just download everything that they, want to tell you. And so it's just a really cool, safe place to get very high quality evidence-based information. And I think that's what we all need. We don't want to be Googling our sexual health problems.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Dr. Google and WebMD tell us we're going to die at every turn. Like that's not reliable. And we want to make sure that the people that are giving us this information have been vetted. And so that's what we're really proud of is like these people are the best people in the field, like Dr. Javed, and, have come together to get the word out about these things we're all really passionate about. We also have a library of erotica on the platform, which is an evidence-based tool to help women with sexual problems. And this is a super fascinating piece of the puzzle that I love to talk about because people are like, erotica in a healthcare app. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Woo.
I
Yeah.
know, like, And so, but it's really cool because like whenever I was learning all about women's sexual health and what are the evidence-based interventions, I was like, okay, what can we pull and put onto a platform that we can like blow the world up with and change everyone's mind? And one of those tools outside of education, outside of CBT is erotica. And I was like, wow, this is different. And I didn't know anything about erotica at the time. I was like, but if it works, like it's no side effects. It's safer than a medication. It's easy. Like what's the rub here? So we put it on the platform. And what we learned really quickly is that not everyone's comfortable with erotica. And that is okay. I love to just honor whatever stage a woman is at or whatever context that she's coming to us from. I want to honor that. I don't want to disrupt that. And so what we did in response to that is we created 3 spice levels. So the first level is we merely mention sex. It's like sex might be happening in the other room, but we'll never talk about it. Maybe we'll give you a little wink like the Notebook. The middle tier is, a bit spicier. And then the third tier is a lot spicier. And so you can pick that curated experience. And then there's also 9 different genres of erotica where you can say, this is what I want to read about. This is what I don't want to read about. And what we're really trying to do there is open the mind to fantasy and positive thoughts about sex, but also kick off something that we talk a lot about on the platform called the arousal desire pathway or responsive desire. So many women who explain that they have low desire actually just have responsive desire, which means they need something to get the cascade started, right? So sometimes women start having sex to feel desirous, which is a legitimate way to do it. Other times, you might access something like erotica, which for us just means written or audio stories that are sexual in nature to kind of get your brain on that wavelength. You know what I mean? It's like we're working so hard all day, we're momming so hard all night, and then we're so tired, but if we can just kind of get that pathway going, a lot of times that leads us to success in our own terms. And that's really what the erotica library is there for. And so it's fun when users start to kind of explore that. They're like, oh, well, this works. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
know it does work.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I love to be able to bring that to the medical field because it's surprising for so many people. But once again, we talk about on the platform erotica as a prescription, and it works just in that way. We also have community where our users can talk to one another and understand, that we were talking about earlier, that they are not alone and that there are lots of other women sort of experiencing the same exact thing as they are. And then our last offering is coaching. And that's where we connect users either in group formats or one-on-one with our coaches to work in a more personalized way through whatever issues are on their minds. And I don't know if you've ever had any, experience with coaching, but I certainly have, both personal in a personal fashion and also in a entrepreneurial fashion. And it is life changing. And
Agreed.
the coaches that we have on our platform are no different. And it's just kind of magic, to be able to see women go from this place of isolation, hopelessness, and fear to this place of empowerment and connectedness and action. And that transformation, I mean, is like what it's all about. So
Right.
I'm thrilled that we're able to do that.
Yeah, it's not taboo where, I
Yeah.
mean, we can't even, I mean, I wouldn't even say sex in front of my parents. Like, I don't even,
Yeah.
I was talking, the girls and I were talking in the office. We don't even like hug our spouse in front of our parents
Yeah.
or grandparents, but yet we all have kids. So obviously,
Right.
like, and we're married. Like,
You've hugged once or twice. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And, but it's nice to have it be not so taboo, right? And
Yeah.
be in a place that's safe and to know that others are experiencing this. And going back to the erotica side, I completely agree with you because and I think it's like so bold of you to do it because if we look at the porn industry that men have accepted for now, a couple of decades online, and they are
Right.
making billions. And I mean, it's one of the most lucrative industries that there is. It's more than
Yeah.
healthcare, actually. There's like more money flowing through, but it is so dark and like it's so dark and but there's a purpose, right? We
Sure.
know what the purpose is, and this seems like we know what the purpose is, but there's a set of morals, ethics, and values that are in there to make it
Yeah.
acceptable. So then, okay, I'm going for my purpose, and I don't feel dirty doing it.
Right. Well, thank you. I mean, I love that. I hope that that's the case. We spend a lot of time. We have a female erotica editor. All of our authors are women. We spend a lot of time focusing on female pleasure because we think it's part of our, mission to rewrite how women's pleasure is depicted in, these types of stories and in the media as much as possible. And, we want to make it, yeah, like a curated, safe spot where you're not going to be judged. There's no transactional history, right? You're on Rosy. Nobody knows what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing on Rosy, right?
Right.
You're on your phone. You could be on Instagram or you could be on Rosy. Like we've tried to make it a very soft, place to land where people can feel very comfortable, in whatever, to my point earlier, whatever context they're coming to us from, we want to make it easy and approachable, safe, positive, and leave people feeling better than they did when they got there, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what do you, this is like mom to mom asking,
Yeah.
for your girls talking about a vibrator, when will you, or do they already know what one is and how it's used and the purpose? And
Yeah.
if no, why? If yes, how did that conversation happen?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. My daughter's 12. So
Totally.
like,
So I also have I have an almost 12-year-old daughter. And then I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So we have not gotten to the pleasure conversation yet. We have obviously covered the basics of, periods, puberty, reproduction, sex. We haven't gotten to pleasure, although I think that that's a really important piece of the conversation, as is consent. And consent conversations start like in my house and in what I've learned through this process, and, as babies. Like, you don't have to kiss people if you don't want to, you're in charge of your body, etc. So that
yes.
conversation is just kind of lifelong, as are really all of these conversations. And so I think there's an opportunity to, when we're thinking about pleasure, we think about it in these steps, just like we might for all of these, which are, let's be age appropriate, right? So my kids know that a vulva is a vulva, right? We don't, the external female genitalia is called vulva, not a vagina. And it has a different name, which is important because the vulva includes the clitoris, the labia. The vagina is the internal part where tampons go and where babies come out. And when we call the vulva the vagina, that erases the pleasurable part of a woman's body that
Oh,
is there just
yes.
for pleasure, right? So when we're talking about, oh, we haven't had like the vibrator conversation, we have had the vulva conversation, right? And what makes up a vulva and why is it not a vagina? And so just semantics and language for boys and girls is actually really, really important, obviously, from the time you're teaching them all their body parts. So that part of the conversation has started. Now, I would say I don't know that I have like I mean, literally, if anyone is going to learn about stuff, it's going to be my kids. We get
Right.
like all the things delivered
Yes.
to the house. And I mean, from companies that I don't order from, like
Yeah.
it's like a madhouse around here. So I can't say that they've had no exposure, but I've not like sat down and been like, this is a vibrator and this is what
Right.
you do with it. But I
Yeah.
definitely think in their early teenage years, that's a very appropriate conversation. And I do think we need to empower our girls with the knowledge that they are entitled and to the experience of pleasure, just like our boys are, right? Whether that's self pleasure, whether that's partnered pleasure, how do we consent around that, and how do we make sure that that's being approached at a pace at which you feel comfortable and are ready to assume responsibility for. And so for me, these conversations are much easier than they are for my husband slash partner, than they are for
Yeah.
my children. They're like, oh my God, what is mom doing? But that's just because I
Yeah.
practice this language all
Yes.
day, every day. And that's
Yes.
really what it's about. Is it's like nothing happens. Like the world does not explode when we talk about this stuff. It's just our
Right.
own internal like
Yes.
anxiety about it. So the more you can practice these very straightforward, matter of fact conversations, the easier they get. And that's also the way that we're supposed to do it with our kids, which is a little here and a little there. And when a question's asked here, we answer it in a straightforward manner. And then when we can feel that the time is here for a pleasure focused conversation, let's have it. So it's not meant to be just like a bleh download of every word I've ever heard. And then we all just like close the door and go,
Right.
hibernate. It's
Right.
meant to be little breadcrumbs, throughout a lifetime of sex positivity, where we're modeling how amazing our bodies are, every single step of the way, just to our conversation earlier.
And being a user of Rosy would, it to me seem like it would help a parent, a mother, then
Yeah.
be more comfortable talking about it with her children as well, because I don't know about your parents, but my parents said absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And with our kids, we are the same, talk about it early,
Yeah.
and then the questions start coming, and we
Totally.
didn't open the book and then close it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you turn a page, and to have it be comfortable, and they understand, and if they don't,
Yeah.
then they can feel comfortable asking about it. um
Totally.
and it's
And
not
that's
like
the
this
hope.
dirty thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not
Yeah.
dirty in a closet. It's like how we all got here, like we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Like this is a huge part of everyone's life that no one talks about.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, what
Yeah.
in the world? How did that happen? And so, yeah, if we can just acknowledge that it's uncomfortable for us, for our children, just because it's so like not spoken about widely, like that's all okay. This is all part of the human experience. And however we come into it is okay. And
Yeah.
that's fine. But the hope is, and we've seen this definitely through a lot of our members, is that as we become empowered, as we start practicing talking about it with our friends, with our partners, with our physicians, that then we can talk about even that change with our families, with our daughters, and be like, hey, this is how I grew up. Now this is what I think. This is how this has changed over time, and I would love to kind of help you feel more comfortable talking about this. Let's work on
Yeah.
this together.
Right.
Our kids are never expecting perfection out of us, and I think if we can share our own personal journeys with them, and this is no different, that it becomes an even more powerful conversation to have, because they see, we're humans too. We're just trying to do the best we can. We want their lives to be better than ours in all aspects, including
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah. So as a gynecologist with your daughters, will you recommend a tampon, or will you go straight for like a menstrual cup,
Yeah,
or no, start with a pad? This is totally going
totally.
off topic of Rosy. I'm totally
It's
taking
fine.
advantage
No,
of my
I
time
love
with
it.
you.
I love it. No, it's good. So for me, okay, so there's this great company. Oh my gosh, I'll think of it. Oh, the Organic Project, and they go for like top for short. They have an awesome like period box that they send out. So they make organic tampons, and I don't really know if I have a strong feeling about organic tampons or not, but I love this company, women founded. And so they make this box. It's called the period box, and you can get it sent to your house. They sent one to my daughter, and so now it's just kind of like hanging out in her bathroom. And it has pads, it has tampons, it has like a whole book about your first period, and like the messaging is, we want you to keep flipping and jumping and dancing, and it's like, so for me, and this is how I would be with any of my patients as well, it's like, I want you to do what feels right at this stage of life for you. Because here's the thing, whenever I was growing up, my mom had specific issue with me using a tampon, but I wanted to swim. Like, I don't understand what you're supposed to do. It's like
Yes.
a tampon
Yeah.
has nothing to do with like, we could get into a whole nother podcast about this, concept of virginity and all of that good
Yes.
stuff.
Yep.
But the point is a tampon is a tampon is a tampon. Like, it doesn't change anything about who you are as a person or as a child or anything like that. So I think you use the right tool for the job. If the person, the patient, the girl, the child is a gymnast, then she's probably going to need to figure out how to use a tampon.
Right.
And a lot of these gymnasts now, my daughter is wearing shorts, so maybe that's not
Yes.
necessary. So I think it's just like what your daughter is comfortable with at the time, and we just are the facilitator of those resources and that education. What I think is best for her isn't really like matter, because she's her own self, and this is another piece of empowering her to make those decisions throughout her life.
Mhm. Yeah, and those options, and being
Yeah,
comfortable with it. Yeah.
right.
You're a good mom. That just
Oh,
sounds
well,
so
I'm
nice.
just trying. Meanwhile,
Right?
my daughter's like hiding in the corner in her room, like, stop talking about me on podcasts. I'm
I
going to
know,
kill you.
sorry. My daughter too. That's but she asks a lot of questions, and we have a little period bag for her too. And her teacher,
Yeah.
actually, they talked about the organic project, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's right.
At school. Her
Oh,
teacher
great.
talked about it. So we made our own. We didn't get it from the company,
I
but
love that.
yeah. And the think
Yeah, the
underwear.
underwear. Yeah, I think that's a
Yes.
great option. Absolutely.
Yes.
I love those. I have an IUD, so that's really all I need, and I think those are great.
Yes. I
Yeah.
have them too. I love them. Well, this part of the conversation was so beneficial in so many ways. I recommend anyone to download the Rosy app, and the comfortability, even from when you and I started talking 36 minutes ago to
Yeah,
now, this is just proof that, like, start talking about it, think about it. It's really
totally.
important in your life. If you aren't able to have pleasure, it put that at the top of your priority list. It's important in your life.
Absolutely. It is. And I mean, it's just one of those like built in free, healthy joys in life. Like, aren't we
Yeah.
all looking for more of that? And
Yes.
So the more that we can sort of think about it, bring it top of mind, think about it less of a chore and as a, list or a list item on the to-do list. It's like, no, it's not meant to be that way at all. And I think reframing it is a super important part of like living our best lives for sure.
You're absolutely right. So when you identified that that there was a gap in the world and you were going to create Rosy, was it uncomfortable going out and raising money and sharing this story and building this? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's so funny to think about it now. So, yes, I had never, I mean, I was a doctor. Like, I'd never asked anybody for money to do anything, right? Like,
Right.
that was a weird thing. That part I definitely had to kind of get my head around. I'm like, am I literally just, and I remember my very first pitch, like it was literally yesterday. The topic for me, I had a bit of a, like self-reflection period where I was like, is this really about to be my life? I was just, I mean, I was not prepared to kind of be a spokesperson for this. And I had never been such really in any other manner in my life. And so, but I was angry enough about it where I was like, okay, if I don't do this, I'm not sure that it's going to happen. And then, so it was almost like a feeling of obligation. Like I thought the thought, I had the, wherewithal and also the like personal support to make it happen. So if I didn't do it, I was going to feel really bad about that. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, so kind of once you have that realization, there's really no turning back.
Right.
And I
Like
was,
you're
yeah,
ordained for it, right? Like that's
yeah,
how
like
I felt.
this is for you. Like, you
Yeah.
go do this. And
Yes.
so, I mean, then I had to just be like, well, isn't the fact that I'm questioning how people are going to receive me personally and this topic, isn't that the problem in and of itself? It is.
Yes.
Right. And so the fact, like, if I
Self-conscious.
was going to be daunted by that, then this was doomed. And so I just made a decision like, no, like that thought angers me that we can't have a respectable conversation about a women's health topic without fear of being judged. Like that makes me mad. And therefore, I'm going to do whatever I can to change it. So, kind of once that flip was switched for me, and I realized, yes, I'm going to have to be the face of this company. I'm in a great position as a physician to be a spokesperson about this. Like, I got to go, I got to do it. And there was also a conversation like, if you don't want to leave practice, which was another huge issue for me, we'll get somebody else to run this. And I was like, nope, like this is my fourth child. I'm not
Yes.
handing her over to anyone.
Yeah.
So let's do it, and kind of ever since that sort of maybe 2 month decision time period, like I have literally never looked back. And honestly, I have to share that it has been very well received. If people hate what I'm doing or think that I'm, like whatever adjective that you might want to put on it, they're not telling me that to my face, which I'm fine
Yeah.
with. And so
Totally.
and we've had so many like, you know, so much wind in our sails from the medical community, from women, from people like you who are helping us spread the word, that it's just you get all those signals where it's like, yes, we're doing the right stuff, we're on the right path, we're making great progress, like we're gonna keep going. So all signs are continuing to point us in this direction for sure.
That's awesome. I
Thank you.
So you couldn't stop thinking about it. You took 2 months to be like, okay, I'm a doctor. I have a
Yeah,
practice. I have
totally.
patients.
Pregnant
And
patients.
yes, like
Yeah.
that made a lot of women mad, I bet. Like,
It was
oh no, where are
upsetting.
you
I was
going?
upset.
Upsetting.
It was
Yes.
very upsetting. Yes, it
Yes.
was. And yeah, so I made the decision. I announced to my patients about 6 months before I actually left, so that if they wanted to find, like, I had partners they could see. I felt real like that. I felt guilty about leaving my partners because I love them so much to this day. They're such great supporters. And then my patients, you have such a great connection with them, and
Yeah.
that was really hard and sad, but also I have this is a wonderful, great part of my life as well. So
Now you have like, how many users do you have right now?
so we have around 200,000 accounts created on the platform. Yeah,
Holy cow. So
so
now you have
yeah.
like 200,000 patients that when I try to call and get into my gynecologist, it's
Yeah,
9 months,
right,
right?
it takes a long
And
time for sure.
so then that would mean it would take me 9 months to take care of my sexual health.
Yeah.
Really,
Right.
what you're doing right now is you're giving me access right now, and you're giving me the treatment, access, the treatment, and I mean, in the community. It's just like so many different things that you're actually doing more than you were when you were practicing at your
Well,
practice. So
it
thank you.
definitely, oh, honestly, it's my pleasure for sure. It definitely looks differently because I still practice every once in a while at the hospital. So that's where I get my like patient fix, where I get to lay hands and do surgery. And like, I love just the interaction. But it's so I had to trade that regular one-on-one, like, let me hold your hand while we talk about this really tough thing, right? Whether that was pregnancy loss or divorce or whatever that really tough thing was. I love that like moment where it's like, I am here for you. I hear you. I see you. For this opportunity to do something that can change the world, right? And so for me, it's always a balance of like, how do I create that connection on the platform for women where where they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel connected, but we are able to do it at scale. And that's the really ultimate dream for Rosy.
Mhm. It is a beautiful app. It
Thank you.
is so so well developed. So you have definitely put in the thought leadership and the medical clinical side of the app. But then aesthetically, it's very beautiful, and the user experience is prime. So can you tell us
Thank you.
about that and your intentionality behind that, how you built
Yeah,
that team, just like wherever you want to go? I would love for you to share with us
absolutely.
Gen
Yeah.
1 to where you are now.
Yeah. I mean, so the team has been such like a just cherry on top of this whole experience. I did not know that I would love leadership so much. I did not know I would love like each of my team members in such I feel such a sense of personal responsibility for everybody on the team, because literally the first few employees I was like for real, you're gonna like quit your other job and come and work
Yes.
on this with me, like, are you sure? But you can't say that, but like I still
Yeah.
feel so like just grateful that these people did that. And I don't know. I think I've been really, I have always sort of hired and led from a really like heart. I mean, this sounds so hokey, but like Brene Brown heart centered place,
Yes. No,
which
it's
is
not
to
hokey.
say, yeah, which is to say, like, I really value hustle. I really value passion. I really value the ability to kind of do what is needed when it's needed over titles and experience and accolades. And so
Yes.
that balance, like, that's different than other people hire, I will say. But for me, what it's led to is a really invested, really talented, scrappy team, which is exactly what you need at a startup, company. And we are all like very invested in one another's and the company's success, because we are driven by this mission every day. And we know that it's not about our individual contribution, but truly like, if the mission is successful, what is our global contribution? And so that's been my sort of tendency thus far. I plan to always lead that way. I think it's such an honor and a privilege, and it leads to, like, to your point, like such a beautiful body of work, that you can
Yeah.
tell like people's hearts are in for sure.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying this to my team. Like I was seeing the app that in Figma, walking through and
Yeah.
looking at this user experience. And I just had to stop and look at everyone and say, I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that all of
Yeah.
you are here committing to this mission. I mean, from
Yeah.
a founder's perspective, is there any
Oh,
greater feeling?
there's nothing greater. Like, literally
Yes.
nothing greater. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. I'm
Awesome.
so with you. And they're all just like just good people, and then you think of this beautiful product that you have. It's
Right.
like so exciting, right?
It is. It's very exciting for sure. Yeah.
So when you raise, how much money are you past your series A?
No, we have not raised our Series A. We have raised a pre-seed and a seed, so a total of just over 3 million. It's like 3.15 or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And you have our I think I first saw you because I was looking at True Wealth Ventures
Yeah.
website, and then that's where I sort of did some research and got Somi put us together.
Yeah.
So that was very nice.
Yeah.
How do you, out of curiosity, keep your investors updated on what you're doing? And what's that relationship like with your
Yeah.
different investors?
So, I mean, it's been an interesting evolution, right? So, since I started that very first pitch meeting that I was just telling you about was, and like this totally threw me for a loop, but it was a yes. And it was the very first time I ever pitched, right?
Oh,
And I
what?
was, I was literally like, what? And so
Yeah.
I had the same experience as I did with my like very early employees, which is to say, like, are you sure? Like, I know this is like literally a billion-dollar industry, but also like me, like, and this, like, are we sure this is it? And so, you go this evolution from being like, thank you so much for this opportunity to work on my passion and build this team and build this product. And then you start getting real and serious traction. And so it's wonderful to be supported by a team of people who really, once again, are driven by the mission, really believe in me as the founder, and have a set of like portfolio companies who can support us in real ways through their experiences or through their connections or whatever. So from Carrie's perspective, I heard Carrie from True Wealth. I heard her talk at a on a panel, and this was before I had even left practice. And I was like, oh, like she will be an investor in Rosy. And so I mean, I just worked that entire time on building that relationship, on showing her the data that she needed. And then that they led our seed round. So that was a really awesome, occasion for us because I wanted them to be a part of this from the very beginning. But that is also said for all of our angels. We have Portfolio in the round. We also had another VC called Mindshift. Another, I mean, SoGal, which are great in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then Avestria. I'm sorry, not Avestria. They have just changed their name to. It was used to be Joyant. So anyway, wonderful VCs who want to see us successful and to also help us to work on all the fundamentals that are always moving and shifting. So that's been great. I send investor updates quarterly
Okay.
to everybody who has invested in the company, and then when it comes time to raise again, we start kind of getting the wheels turning with what are the plans for the next round, what are the milestones we're going to raise, and then I'll be touching base about all of those things pretty soon. So it's
And
coming
do
up.
you use Carta
We
to
do.
do you? I love
Yes.
isn't that amazing
It's amazing. It's
platform?
yeah. I mean, there are definitely great things about it that make things a lot easier, but it is quite the investment. So that's,
Oh, I agree. I'm
yeah.
like, wait, you're supposed to be for startups, but I can't afford
Yeah,
you. That doesn't make sense.
exactly.
But I paid for
Exactly.
it, so
We all pay for it because that's what
yeah,
our investors require, but it's an investment for sure. But it does make life easier. I mean, I will say.
yeah. And sending the updates, I think that's nice through there. And we just invested in the compensation
Uh-huh.
package that I think is good as we look at budgeting for the
Yeah,
next 18 months and go out to raise our Series A. Then we can make sure that we're competitive in our compensation,
right.
as well as the with shares. How much
Yeah,
is our option pool, and how much are we going to give everyone? Are we being fair?
right.
So I thought that was worth the investment as well.
Yeah, it helps you keep a nice high level instead of getting in the weeds like sometimes you can.
Yes, and better than Glassdoor. Like
Yeah,
Glassdoor
I
can be,
haven't. This is the only one we've ever used, so I can't speak. But yeah,
it's all we can do. Um, okay, Lyndsey, it's 2:00 right now. Do you have a 2:00 that you have to go
I
to?
just checked. I'm doing okay. I have a
Okay,
15-minute buffer.
okay. So I just wanted to ask you two questions, and then I'll let you go.
Great.
Um, the one question is, where are you at in the company right now, and what are you working on as your team, as the leader? What are you all
Yeah,
working on?
yeah. So, I think we have a lot of things going for us. So, where we are at, or that, we have lots of engaged and really, I would say, enthusiastic users. We have great data that we've been able to share at multiple conferences, and that some have been published about Rosy's efficacy, meaning, women who use Rosy show better outcomes when it comes to sexual health. but we also are able to contribute back to the field of just women's sexuality in general. I think at this point, we probably have the largest data set in the field, right? There's not anybody else doing what we're doing. And we're very committed to expanding what everyone knows about women's sexual health. So using that data in a very responsible way to add back to the collective body of knowledge. So I'm very proud of that. And we also have a very engaged and I would say supportive community of healthcare providers. So we have more than 7% of OB-GYNs around the country recommending Rosy to their patients, more than 4,900, I need to update that number, physicians and therapists recommending Rosy to their patients. So extremely enthusiastic healthcare provider recommendation sort of network, which makes me so proud as well. So, and then the thing that we've started working on this year, and I think kind of where we're headed, are these opportunities for more pilots and partnerships. We just finished one this summer through the Roche Creosphere program, where we did a pilot with Roche Diagnostics and really looked at Rosy as an opportunity to improve educational understanding of HPV and cervical cancer screening and awareness, and then also intention to discuss screening with their healthcare providers. So, not only can we as individuals receive benefit from Rosy when it comes to our sexual health goals, but I think there are also some population health, opportunities where we can really change behavior, increase screening, increase early detection, change those long-term healthcare outcomes in women's health that we all are so concerned about. So that stuff is really exciting. And I'm spending a lot of time working on other opportunities like that.
Wow, that's huge. Roche is a great strategic to partner with. Congratulations.
For sure, yeah. Oh, thank you. I mean, it came once again through one of the physicians that loves Rosy. She works there and she brought us up to their innovation team. And so things like that keep happening. We have a ton of data coming out of Cedars for the same reason. We have some opportunities within all these systems that we would never be able to get to at our stage because of our physician champions within those organizations. So literally such a gift.
That is incredible. And to get those physicians, are you leading that charge, or are you, that's
one of my jobs. Yeah, because it's not even the network as much as it is. I just do a lot of education in the field, right? So one of my drum beats is women's sexual health. It's not that complicated. And so as far and wide as I can spread that message, then that brings physicians into this conversation that haven't gone here, but they recognize it's a problem, but they didn't have that training. So how can we make that pathway to where they're not feeling confident to feeling really confident when helping their patients with these? And so that's a lot of the work that I do in medicine and in women's health.
Oh, you have a perfect background for it too. I mean, you're excited about it. You're a founder, you're a doctor, and very cool. I can see why you have had such great adoption of the platform, and it's just a fantastic product.
Well, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. The last question that I have is for people that are listening that are aspiring entrepreneurs, or they're very early on, which is sometimes, most of the time, the hardest time to think of, can I keep going? Would you have any words of inspiration, advice, or just something that you can share as a closing comment with the audience?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I would say, if you're feeling stuck, examine where that feeling is coming from, right? And then just see in your network, whether it's like your friend group, your professional group, or just on a random podcast or LinkedIn, who is available to you that can help you get through that problem, whether it's a mindset change or whether it's actually like the answer to your problem. There is somebody out there who is willing to help you and who is excited to help you and who can help and who will get you from A to B, right? They're not going to do the work for you, but they're going to give you either the confidence that you need or the information that you need to solve whatever problem that you're working on. So if you're stuck, it's time to reach out, come out of your sand hole, ask around. And I cannot tell you how many times I've done that. And people are just so open and willing to engage. And that has gotten us over so many problems and continues to today, that I'm still just so filled with gratitude for all the people that take 10 or 15 minutes or make an introduction for me or whatever the case may be for whatever problem I'm facing, because there's somebody who's faced it before and is there to, kind of help guide you through it. You're not alone. It feels pretty lonely sometimes, but in fact, there's enough of us out there who know that feeling to want to change it and provide that support for others.
You just gave the same advice that Kate Hawken did from Maxwell
Oh,
and
great.
Geraldine.
I love
And
that.
she said her connection was she asked, and it was someone at Kate Spade. And she
Amazing.
got time with them. And then they introduced this manufacturer and a textile supplier. And it's like just
That's it.
snowballed.
Yeah,
And it's not pick up the phone,
exactly.
LinkedIn, email, just do it because everyone is willing to help.
That's right. And if they're not, then that's fine too. But like if you're gonna, I mean, for us, I was like working on all this, and as I mentioned, have had no therapy background. Like I'm a doctor. I don't know what I'm talking about. I knew a little bit more now than I used to, but I read a book by Lori Mintz, who is a like very well-known sex therapist, and she wrote A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex and Becoming Clitorate. And I was like, this is the woman that I need. So I like randomly, I don't even know how I reached out to her. I think I may have gotten her email, or maybe I just like reached out on her website. I don't know. And she wrote me back and is now like part of the Rosy platform. I gave a talk with her at like the national, OB-GYN meeting last year. She's like one of my dear friends. And it's all because I just like randomly wrote her an email on her website. You know what I
That
mean?
is
It's like
so cool.
so freaking
Yes.
cool. Yeah. And I mean, I
Yes.
could probably give you like 10 more examples just like that, where it's like the doors just open when you push on them a little bit. So
Yeah. I did the same with Dr. Lester Hartman of a strep study. And I called his care coordinator, and he was the only one to run a strep study with Boston Children's. And he went to my FDA pre-sub, like
that's
loved it.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's so cool.
people want to help.
They do.
Uh, well, Dr. Harper, it was so nice to have you on the Persevere podcast. Thank you so much. And I am really stressing that women should download the Rosy app. It is a wonderful work, and I really hope to meet you when we are I think you're going to be at the health conference as
Yes,
well. You're speaking, right?
I'm speaking. Yeah, I'll see you there.
Well, I will be there front row cheering you on. Thank you so much
Amazing.
for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been great fun. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Now, if you love this episode and if you want to keep the conversation going, head over to LinkedIn and find the Persevere podcast community. We will continue the conversation as well as connect with other founders and talk about the challenges that we're facing and the opportunities that exist. It's great to network as founders. And everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome. Do you know someone that would be a good fit for the Persevere podcast? Please direct message me on any social channel at Patty Post CEO, and I'd love to hear your suggestions. This podcast was brought to you by the Checkable Health production team and edited by the Grow the Show team. Well, that was an excellent episode. Dr. Harper, thank you so much for joining me. I think that this is a prime example of being an entrepreneur, finding a gap, and then creating this solution and being driven to get it done. Dr. Harper, I love doctors that turn entrepreneurs. It's a very unique skill set, and it takes a lot of brilliance, and it takes a lot of gumption, I think, to take a very steady medical practice and move it into a high-tech company that's extremely risky. But as you heard, lots of people are on board with Dr. Harper. And you know what? I hope that she really inspires other people and other women specifically to help fill the gap in sexual health and just in women's health in general. We need more research done, we need more funding, and we need more products that help women's health move forward. We are so important. Keep on changing the world. So, with that, keep persevering and please give us 5 stars. It keeps us going. Subscribe. And until next time, you keep on persevering in business.